welcome to part 5 of my series on Miles Mathis's research article titled "The Tate Murders Were a False Flag in the Greatest Unknown Success Story of Project Chaos." Let's jump right back where we left off from part 4. Now that you have in your head the idea that a man can pose as his non-existent younger brother, try the idea that a woman can pose as her non-existent younger sister. We are told that Sharon Tate has 2 younger sisters, Deborah and Patty. Deborah is 9 years younger and Patty is 15 years younger. That first picture above is tagged as Sharon and Patty, but that must be wrong. The second picture is supposed to be Sharon with Santa Claus, and that is obviously the same little girl as in the first picture. So the first picture must be Doris, the mother, and Sharon, not Sharon and Patty. We can tell that from the clothes, which are late 40s style, not early 60s. Look at the hat. That isn't a 60s hat. This one is also tagged Sharon and Patty. How come that little girl looks nothing like the previous little girl? Like Patty, or like a Tate sister? All 3 Tates were gorgeous. This is supposed to be all 3 sisters. That's a paste-up, if I have ever seen one. Why is the baby's face so much whiter than Sharon's or Deborah's? Why does Sharon have a dark cloud around her head? If that is a shadow on the back cloth behind, why is her head casting a shadow but not her shoulder? Why is she casting a shadow straight back on the cloth, but the baby isn't casting a shadow straight back on her? And why is there a lighter halo around Sharon between her head and the dark shadow? That's a paste line from before they had Photoshop. That faked photo destroys the entire plot by itself. If they were really sisters, there would be genuine photos. The only reason to paste up a photo like that is because they aren't any real photos of them. That is supposed to be all 3 sisters. But again, the youngest girl doesn't look like Patty or like the other sisters. People have friends and cousins, you know. I think we need something better than that. But notice the age difference between Patty and Deborah. Considerable. Remember that for later. Here is a picture at Sharon's alleged funeral. Some websites tag that as Polanski with the mother Doris Tate and sister Patty Tate. 2 things are wrong there, however. 1, where is Deborah? We see only 1 sister, which is curious. Also, Patty should have been 11 years old here. Does that girl look 11? No, she looks about 15 to 17, which was Deborah's age then. That isn't Patty, it is Deborah. There is no Patty. Other websites tag that photo as Deborah. Here's another one. Still no Patty. 2 different photographers and neither one bothered to get both sisters in the shot? Here's another. And another. Here's the only picture I could find of 2 girls together at the funeral. Those 2 girls aren't 6 years apart, as we see in the video itself. They are the same height and same size. It is the second girl that is in the other 4 photos, since she has short sleeves and a lace collar. Study the other 4 photos above. That girl is about 17, not 11. I encourage you to watch the NBC archived video of the funeral, which you can find on YouTube, where you see Deborah. Her hair is light chestnut brown and she looks 15 to 17. There is no one there who looks 11. If Patty were there, she would be with her sister or mother, wouldn't she? She isn't. There is no record of a Patty Tate before 1970. I recommend you watch the NBC archived video, but please notice how it has been edited. It is chopped in a million pieces. You see very little of value, and that is not an accident. You get lots of footage of the backs of people's heads, but very little footage where you can see anything. They have even installed a fake counter on top of the footage to make you think you are getting some sort of original feed. again. Some have said that there are 2 girls at the funeral, but the other girl with Deborah in a couple of frames is not 6 years younger. They look the same age. They may be 1 or 2 years apart, but never 6. That other girl is either a cousin, a niece, or a hire. Following that idea, we may ask if Sharon had a cousin or niece about that age. She did! Here's a picture from 2008 of Sharon's cousin Pam Turner at Susan Atkins' parole hearing. How old would you say that woman is? I would guess around 55. She may be older, but she has a good dye job, which makes her around 16 in 1969. We have a match. A 16-year-old cousin would almost certainly have come to the funeral. This older woman even looks like the young girl, with the same face shape and the same nose. And we could call it a probable match from that alone. Other facts: Sharon was 26 when she allegedly died. She was supposed to be 15 years older than Patty. So we are supposed to believe that Mother Doris had one girl, then had another girl 9 years later, then another 6 years after that? Not impossible, but unlikely. When Patty/Sharon allegedly died of breast cancer in 2000, she was said to be cremated. This prevents there being 2 bodies of Patty/Sharon, you see. They put Patty/Sharon in Sharon's coffin and put any old ashes in Patty's urn, and the deed is done. So where did they come up with the name Patty? Well, there was a character on the soap opera Search for Tomorrow named Patty Tate. She was well known in the 50s and 60s. SFT had just expanded to a half hour in 1968. Maybe Patty Tate was a favorite character of Sharon. There are a couple of identifying marks of Sharon by which we can always know it is her. 1. She has 2 small moles beneath her mouth on the right side. She normally covers them with makeup, so you won't see them in all photos or videos. Many photos are also retouched by the studios, removing scars or moles or pimples. She also has a small mole or big freckle on her left cheek. Last 2 photos are reversed compared to the first 2. She also has a little scar under her left eye, which Christopher Jones mentioned in his interview. You can see it clearly in the first and third pictures going straight down. She had a scar on her left knee, also a chickenpox scar on her forehead, which you can see here. We are told that Sharon had brown eyes, but she didn't. She had hazel eyes. That's a chubby young Sharon with hazel eyes. We can see both moles and a scar. Hazel eyes can seem to go from light brown to green in changing light. In blue light, they can look faintly blue. They generally have more yellow or gold in them than brown eyes. It is not surprising we are told Sharon had brown eyes, since hazel eyes are very often mistaken for brown. Many people don't even know what hazel eyes are, and in photos the difference is subtle. Unless the photo is perfectly color balanced, the eye color may not be correct. In a majority of cases, you couldn't tell brown eyes from hazel in a photo. I had to look through quite a few photos of Sharon before I found the one above, which has enough resolution for us to see her eyes are hazel. I also found this one, which is even better. The bright light from the snow washes out her eye color, making it very obvious they are hazel. Brown eyes never look like that. It is also worth noting that hazel eyes are easier to change with blue contacts than brown eyes. Since the irises of hazel eyes are lighter, the color can be covered more easily. It is sort of like hair coloring. It is easier to change blonde hair to brown than to change brown hair to blonde. It is always easier to go from light to dark than dark to light. What color eyes does Patty have? Very difficult to tell from the internet. Some say she had blue eyes, but they may have been blue contacts. Let's look at the only decent photo we have of her on the web. could be either blue, green, gray, or hazel. Not obviously blue, but the left eye looks bluer than the right due to the way it is lit. The right eye could be called hazel at a stretch. Patty is wearing bright blue. I cropped the photo, and the room is very blue, and eyes reflect colors around them. Blue eyes should look very blue in that situation, and these don't. But we do see very light irises, like in the last picture above of Sharon. That's fairly rare, even with blue-eyed people. Eyes of all colors rarely have this much translucence. Could be a match, but I would say this test is inconclusive, so we will keep looking. Sharon also had a very distinctive left ear, which was sort of elfish. It is flat across the top and has a little nick just below that on the outside. You can see this most easily in her cruise interview with Valley of the Dolls. You can also see it here. You may be interested to know that Sherlock Holmes identified one of his suspects by noticing her ears. In Dressed to Kill, Basil Rathbone recognizes Patricia Morrison by her ears, although she is in a charwoman's costume and a wig. Before we get to the final clue, let us study the information on Patty and Deborah on the internet. We know that as adults, Deborah and Sharon didn't look much alike. But Patty looked exactly like Sharon? Everyone admits that, but no one asks any questions. Curious. Patty is supposed to have married Don Ford in 1978, having 3 kids with him. There are no pictures of Don Ford and Patty Tate together online. He was a very famous and handsome basketball player, and she was a famous beauty, but no pictures of them survive? No paparazzi were interested? Either the marriage never happened or it has been scrubbed. But she is also said to have been the domestic partner and lesbian lover of Elisa Statman. Statman just happens to be a film director like Polanski. In a CNN article from 2012, Statman claims she stole 2 blue boxes of photos, slides, and negatives from a detective who worked on the Tate murders. She is now using these in her new book called Restless Souls. That story is obviously fiction, so we can assume that Statman is yet another FBI or CIA creation, put there to spread more confusion. There are no pictures of Statman with Patty Tate online. Patty Tate is also said to have been the lesbian lover of Robin Olsen. She apparently was with both Olsen and Statman in the 1990s after she split with Don Ford in 1992. We are told she left her kids with Statman instead of with her sister Deborah. Right. In her commentary on Restless Souls, which she has threatened to sue Statman over, Deborah Tate says that Patty had few substantial memories of Sharon, and that Patty could remember little about the funeral. No wonder, since she wasn't there, she didn't exist. Deborah was disinherited by her father, though no one really knows why. They weren't close. We must assume Deborah didn't like her father, and knowing what we now know, we can see why. The family was used to promote a fascist cause, the suppression of the anti-war movement, and perhaps Deborah wasn't happy with her role in that. Being young, she would have had no say in it, but she had never been free to tell the truth or to walk away. She has probably been threatened and watched all her life. That would age you too. Paul Tate was cremated, like many other players in this saga, although he had requested to be buried at Holy Cross with the rest of the family. However, his ashes are not Holy Cross either. Patty Tate's ashes are said to be buried there, but not his. Neither is there any memorial to him, not even a line on the family gravestone. Furthermore, Deborah refused to give him a military funeral. Others planned one, but she refused to sign the forms necessary. She also refused to pay for his cremation and left his ashes at the mortuary for months until the estate was forced to pay for them. Patty Tate has an even bigger problem. Although she has a gravestone claiming she died in 2000, there is no government record of it. We are told she was born October 30th, 1957 and died June 3rd, 2000. According to Checkmate.com, Patricia G. Ford, née Tate, kin to Deborah and Don Ford, is 56 years old and still living in California. According to DobSearch.com, no one by that name was born or died on those dates. According to Fold3.com, no one by that name died in that year. According to the Social Security Death Index, SSDI, no one by that name died in that year. According to the California Birth Index, no one by that name was born in that year. Even stranger, Ancestry.com and several other sites seemed to block any search on that name. So Patty Tate not only has no government record of her death, she has no government record of her birth. She is a complete phantom. Amazingly, so is Sharon Tate. There is no SSDI card in 1969 for Sharon Tate or Sharon Polanski. According to the webmaster at Manson.free forums, Sharon's social security number is 452-74-4733, so you can look it up yourself. It is also on her death certificate, of course. The webmaster seems to be misdirecting, since he gives you a link to California death records and recommends you use Polanski for her last name instead of Tate. But if you do that, you still get no death record. But we do get some good information, since the original poster in this forum tells us that none of those allegedly killed that night are listed at SSDI, except Leno LaBianca. That confirms the analysis in this paper. Those are some early pictures of Deborah, although some have been tagged as Patty on the internet. The first one is reversed. The second one is tagged Patty on Tumblr, but the History Channel tells us that is Deborah. Notice her left eye is higher than her right eye. Sharon/Patty has this trait as well, but it is less pronounced with her. With Sharon/Patty, this trait became more pronounced as she aged, as is often the case. Both these photos have been tagged as Patty. The second one because she appears to have blue eyes, but the first one appears to have brown eyes, and it is obviously the same person with the same haircut. Either she is wearing blue contacts in the second photo, or the photo has been manipulated. The person in these two photos is the same, and is the same as the person in the black and white just above them. The girl on the beach is inconclusive, but it certainly isn't Patty. It is probably Deborah, but maybe a cousin. Here's another one tagged Patty that is obviously Deborah. There are almost no pictures of Patty on the internet, as you would expect. There are no close-ups or headshots other than the one above, and there are none until she starts to get older. None in her 20s or early 30s. That seems odd until you think about it. Sharon couldn't pop back on TV in the mid-1970s claiming to be Patty. Patty would have been 18 in 1976. Although Sharon was aging very well, she didn't look 18. If we move ahead to 1982, Sharon would be 39 and trying to play 24. Still too early. If we move ahead to 1992, Sharon would be 49, trying to play 34. That is doable. Actresses do it all the time. With good makeup and good hair coloring and very good genes, a naturally beautiful woman can achieve that. And that is when Patty emerged. The interviews you see on YouTube are from 1992 through 1994. I found a picture from an earlier interview, but the interview itself appears to have been scrubbed. Let's say that interview was from around 1990. She looks fantastic, as I think we can all agree, but she doesn't really look 32. She looks like a gorgeous 40 to 45. The eyelids tell us that by themselves, as well as the falling cheeks. Sharon was 47 in 1990, so she must have stopped smoking and doing drugs. She was getting her sleep, apparently. None of the existing pictures or videos of Patty are of a quality where we could see scars or moles, but we do get this clue left by someone who wants the truth to come out. That is Patty/Sharon in front of a picture of Sharon in about 1992. You can see that the resemblance is very close. Most can see that it is the same person even without being given the clue. Patty/Sharon just wears less makeup than Sharon did. Patty/Sharon didn't even have to change her hair color, even though neither Sharon nor Patty are natural blondes. Patty/Sharon wanted to become a blonde again, and after a certain amount of time she felt free to do so. She felt secure enough to do whatever she wanted, including going on TV and doing interviews. Unfortunately, she made one mistake. She went on TV with her hair up and I saw her left ear. If you can go to the interview, notice she tries to keep her right side to the camera, but in a couple of short instances we can see her left ear. You will say that sisters have the same ears, but they don't. Do you have the same ears as your siblings? No! Often, the overall shape may be similar, but things like this are individual traits, not family traits. The shape match all along the outside of the ear in photos 1 and 2 is too close to be passed off as coincidence or family. Notice that Patty/Sharon coughs twice in the 25th anniversary interview, which would have been 1994. This cough is what allows us to see her left ear, since she turns away from the interviewer to cover her mouth. But what is she saying when she coughs? The first time she says, "I don't think Manson will ever get out of prison," cough. The second time she says, "He is not a man that will ever be turned loose on free society. He's just too dangerous," cough. These coughs would be read by any psychologist as a sign of stress. Most would say that just mentioning Manson's name still gives Patty stress. But since this is Sharon, we have a different interpretation. Sharon knows Manson is just another actor like herself, and that since 1967, he has never been in jail. Like everything else, his jail interviews are fake. He comes into the studio when they need him, that's all. Sharon is coughing to cover up the whopping lies she is telling. Her other lies are minuscule in comparison to that lie. While you are studying that interview, I encourage you to compare Patty's voice to Sharon's.
I don't fool myself. I can't see myself doing Shakespeare or anything like that. I would love like comedy, but it takes so long. You know, comedy is one of the most difficult types of acting to do. It takes so long because you have to be so serious, and that's the funny thing about it. And I haven't had the experience at the moment, but I'm giving it.
He's created his own picture to the world. He's painted the picture of himself to the world every time he goes and he speaks to someone. And you see him on TV and you can tell that he's wild. You know, he's not a safe man. I mean, and he's not a man that will ever be turned loose on free society. You know, he's just too dangerous.
Patty, let's just hold it for 1 second.
Okay.
I'd like to continue more with you.
Okay.
We'll be right back after this. Stay.
Sharon's voice as Patty has become a bit rougher with age, but she has the same pitch and the same pacing and the same inflections. Someone should put a voice analyzer on these videos. You will say that sisters have the same voice, but of course they don't. Your voice is unique to you. Which brings us to one final question concerning Sharon in this paper. Patty is said to have died of breast cancer in 2000 at age 42. Sharon would have been 57. Is Sharon really dead this time, or did she simply want to go away again? It may be that all the TV appearances in the early 90s raised some eyebrows, leading others to ask the questions I am asking. Was she feeling some heat? Did she need to return to Brazil for a few more years? I don't know. I have nothing to go on. Sharon looked really healthy in the mid-1990s, but she had used a lot of hair color over the years as well as other beauty products. These things are known to cause cancer. That said, the prognosis for recovery from breast cancer is excellent, especially for a woman under 60. Only about 40 of every 100,000 women die from breast cancer, and most are those diagnosed late. For myself, I don't tend to believe anything I read in the papers, and things regarding the Tates least of all. Sharon would be 70 this year. Now that we know the answer, so many things fit into place. For instance, the fact that Sharon was 8.5 months pregnant is admitted but never studied as evidence. Given the story they sold you, it couldn't really be relevant. It was just an accident, a coincidence. But now we can see it is another major clue. It explains why Sharon was willing to retire from acting. She was about to have her first child, and she wanted to take care of her child. She didn't want to be an actress anymore. She was perfectly willing, at the time, to have her death faked because she was perfectly happy at the new anonymity it would afford her. It would allow her to retire with her family and not be bothered by fans and the press. She had had her fun in Hollywood, but she now wanted to be a quiet mom for a while. This plan meshed with that desire so well. It looks to me like those in Hollywood and music have long had an escape clause. When they sign the initial contracts or first discover that the film and music industries are just arms of intelligence, they are told they can later get out if they want to. Many in the industry never develop qualms. They enjoy working with intelligence and have no desire to quit. But intelligence will work temporarily even with those who do develop regrets. They don't have to murder anyone who wants out. Most just retire and fade away. But for the most famous, that isn't a viable option. They can't fade away because they simply have too many fans. Intelligence can help with that. A faked death can easily solve that problem. This is what happened to many stars, more than you think. Not only Elvis and Jim Morrison and John Lennon, but a large percentage of all the other deaths you know of. Very few Hollywood deaths actually occurred, and realizing what happened here may help you unwind any other death you may have questions about. The faked deaths suits intelligence very well also, since it immediately creates plausible deniability. You may ask yourself, what happens if a very famous person threatens to squeal on the whole project? Does intelligence need to kill them to prevent exposure? No. Even then, a faked death solves the problem in a much cleaner manner. For instance, say Elvis showed up today and started spilling the beans on everything. All intelligence has to do is say, "That's not Elvis. Everyone knows Elvis is dead." Then they take Elvis, put him in an institution for a few months until he sobers up, and let him go. Problem solved, and no blood on anyone's hands. Now that we have reached the end, let's ask how many people would have to be controlled to make the Tate event happen. I will be told that conspiracies like this would require hundreds to be controlled, but that simply isn't true. Outside of the willing accomplices, this could have been pulled with minimal outside knowledge. Most people don't understand how little it really takes. A handful in the police department would have to be paid off or coerced. The coroner would have to be paid off, and a select number of hippie girls would have to be controlled one way or the other. And that's about it. Those in the FBI or CIA don't have to be controlled since they are just doing their jobs. And they control all the information. They control what is told to the press. They control what is told to police officers. They control what is told to attorneys and judges. Even the prosecuting attorney, Bugliosi, may not know what really happened, since he always relied on information provided to him. Most people accept what they are told, and that includes most officials. If you control the crime scene and the information, you control the whole event. We then add a few who have to be controlled in the mop-up, those who see something or figure something out, but that is limited to a handful, and they can normally be kept quiet with nothing more than a threat. That is precisely what we have seen with the Tate murders, and indeed with all other big media events. Almost no one in any capacity ever questioned the story, and those few who did couldn't navigate the evidence.
I don't think, and that must still take time or two, and a week and sigh till I droop and die. 'cause I certainly got the suicide blues. You tell the people.
Five persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate, who starred in Valley of the Dolls, was 8 months pregnant and was found in a bikini-type nightgown with a rope around her neck attached to the body of a man.
2 bodies inside, 2 bodies outside.
Authorities would allow no one in an unofficial capacity inside the posh $200,000 home in the hills overlooking Los Angeles. When police arrived, they found the telephones and electricity lines cut. The bodies had been dead about 12 hours. They were discovered this morning by a maid who ran screaming to neighbors. One officer summed up the murders when he said, "In all my years, I have never seen anything like this before."
The word war was carved into LaBianca's chest, and "Death to Pigs" was smeared in the blood of one of the victims. The word pig had been scrawled in blood on the door of the Bel Air mansion, where actress Sharon Tate and 4 others were slain, but police said, despite the similarities, they do not believe the crimes are linked.
We're now talking to Patty Tate, Sharon Tate's younger sister, 25 years on. Patty, we are saying this is the 25th anniversary. Let's refresh our minds.
Absolutely, and there's hardly a day that I don't think about my sister. I mean, she's still very much within my heart, and still very much, I mean, even though she may not stand beside us, you know, our family.
That we were instructed to go all the way down every house, hit every house on the street. On the street, yes.
And kill all the people in
Kill all
those
the
houses.
people in all those houses. And we went into the house, and I remember that. All I can remember seeing is people just scattering in different places and running in different places. And I was sitting with Sharon Tate, and she was talking to me, and I remember that I had absolutely, I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing for her as she begged for her life and for the life of the baby. And I remember when we first went in, one of the people said, "Who are you?" And Tate said, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." And I remember that in my conscience, it's so alive in me, and just recalling it, I remember that I had gone so far and there was no turning back. That even if I had wanted to run, even if I had wanted to leave, I couldn't. It was like I was caught in something that I had no control over. I had absolutely no say-so as to what was happening there. It was just like a tool in the hands of the devil is the only way I can put it. And I believe that it was by the grace of God that my hand did not go down at that night on Wojciech Kowski's chest. I believe that...
Well, who did kill those people?
that night?
Yeah.
Tex. You wanna...
Well, I can ask you now, what did Tex really do there?
Of what I saw happening in Tex, the way he moved, the viciousness and cold.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Did Vinny Rat... How are you today?
Good, how are you? What keeps you going after so many years?
A long time ago, I started playing music.
it was just like seeing somebody go crazy with more power than I've ever seen anybody. I don't think he was in control of himself. I think that he was, in their own human strength, could do what Tex did.
Well, Charles Manson was in control of him, right?
Yeah, as far as giving orders, but I don't think Charles Manson's mind was in control of Tex's mind that night. I think that it was a higher power than that. Charlie's human too, you know, and his mental powers are just as limited, maybe not as limited as other humans, but that there was an evil force in control of Tex that night.
Well, it was in control of all of them,
he did things that, you've heard stories, I'm sure, of people who have lifted up cars off of other people, how they have superhuman strength. Well, Tex had that kind of strength that night. But not for good, it was for evil. It's harming and hurting people. Just, I only saw him kill those people, and then I've heard later that he has said himself that he was responsible for all the deaths. I feel pain when I think about her and that she's not here, and I don't think that anything that I could say could ease that pain in any of the survivors' hearts. You'd have to understand what acid does to the mind in order to understand how a person can get confused behind drugs. And that's, I would take a thesis, writing a book on what LSD can do to the mind.
But it was powerful enough to keep you in a fog for all those years, even after you stopped using it.
I used to think that you came down off an acid trip after 12 hours. That's not true. Every time you take LSD, the moral fiber of your character, which is put in you, or when you grow up, everybody grows up with different morals according to their culture. Okay, when you take acid, you go out beyond that. You think you're coming back to where you started from. Originally, you don't. And every time you drop acid, you get a little bit further away from reality. And I took so much acid that I just was what I would term spaced. And it took me many years to what I term now re-enter. And that was just through not having any acid and having to deal with reality every day.
Well, you say you're operating from a sense of complete consciousness now and reality. Then looking back from this point for you, what you were and what you did must be terrifying.
Yes, to realize that by my own free will, I willingly got into something that completely took control of me, that I lost control of myself behind drugs and a process of deprogramming, losing my morals.
It wasn't just drugs, it was Charles Manson's persuasiveness too.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of deprogramming that was involved in that.